Max Verstappen chose to stay at Red Bull for 2026, watched his advantage over the rest of the grid evaporate, and now sits at the center of the most expensive driver transfer battle in Formula One history. He is ninth in the 2026 Drivers' Championship with just 12 points from 3 race weekends, and built into his contract is a performance clause that could make him a free agent this summer and trigger a bidding war. Analysts are projecting a $500 million. Verstappen is contracted to Red Bull until the end of 2028, but paper contracts in Formula One rarely tell the full story. The race reported that a new exit clause was written into his deal with the 2026 season specifically in mind, because everyone involved understood the new regulations would produce massive performance swings between teams. The terms are straightforward enough. If Verstappen is not inside the top 2 of the Drivers' Championship by the summer break, he can exercise his right to leave, and the window to notify Red Bull of that decision runs from August through October. What makes this clause so significant is the context surrounding it. Helmut Marko confirmed in December 2024 that a previous performance clause had been changed or removed, describing that adjustment as laying a foundation for the team's future and calling Verstappen one of the greatest sportsmen in the world. The new clause that replaced it is now the one that matters most, and the timing of it could not be worse for Red Bull. With Mercedes dominant after 3 rounds of 2026, the chances of Verstappen sitting inside the top 2 by the Hungarian Grand Prix on 24th to 26th July are, by any honest reading of the standings, remote. Before any transfer conversation can be properly understood, one development reframes the entire picture. Gianpiero Lambiase, Verstappen's race engineer through all 4 consecutive World Championships, has announced he is leaving Red Bull to join McLaren, taking on a deputy role to team principal Andrea Stella, with the move confirmed no later than 2028. Ralf Schumacher came out publicly and said he cannot imagine Verstappen finishing 2027 at Red Bull and believes the Lambiase departure will set off a chain reaction across the entire driver market. Consider what that departure actually represents. Lambiase was the voice in Verstappen's ear during every one of those title fights, and he operated inside the same trusted inner circle as Verstappen's father Jos. His exit from Red Bull is not a routine staffing update. It is a signal about where the team is heading, and it reflects the confidence those closest to the situation have in what is coming. Whether Verstappen draws the same conclusion from it remains the central question. The $500 million figure is not a single offer sitting on a table waiting to be signed. It is a projection of what a competitive bidding war between multiple teams would cost across the length of a contract. Verstappen currently earns $76 million per year at Red Bull, making him the highest-paid driver on the grid, and the belief among those watching closely is that he could become the first Formula One driver in history to earn a 9-figure annual salary if he enters the open market. 4 teams are in the conversation. McLaren arrived at this story with something no other team can offer. Lambiase is already on his way there. Their car sits among the fastest on the 2026 grid, and the infrastructure around a Verstappen move is being assembled piece by piece. The obstacle is the existing lineup. Oscar Piastri is contracted, is a central part of a driver pairing McLaren have carefully constructed, and is on a team that is already winning. Bringing Verstappen in means removing someone from a setup that does not need fixing, and that is a conversation no team principal finds straightforward, even when the driver asking is the most dominant of his generation. Mercedes, by contrast, represents the shortest route to a 5th championship. Their dominance through the opening rounds of 2026 has already drawn comparisons with their approach at the start of the hybrid era, and if Verstappen's priority is winning again as quickly as possible, the destination is obvious. The problem is that Toto Wolff closed the door at Suzuka, telling media plainly that Mercedes have 2 drivers on long-term multi-year contracts and absolutely no reason to consider a lineup change. George Russell and Kimi Antonelli are locked in, and the public position from the team could not be clearer. And yet the whispers have not stopped. Dutch pundit Jack Ploy went on local television and told viewers he had heard directly from Jos Verstappen that Max is going to Mercedes, recounting a conversation in which Jos apparently used those exact words. Jos responded publicly and suggested Ploy might want to get his hearing professionally checked. 2 people in the same conversation, 2 completely different accounts of what was said, and that contradiction alone is enough to keep the Mercedes story alive until someone produces something definitive. Ferrari is the destination Verstappen has spoken about with something close to genuine longing. Journalist Bianca Garloff reported that he has admitted he has his sights set on the Scuderia and described it as a big deal, and when he won at Monza, the reception from the Ferrari tifosi was the kind drivers carry with them for years. The path is blocked for now. Charles Leclerc is committed on a long-term contract, and Lewis Hamilton is out of contract at the end of 2026 with an option for a further year. Hamilton is 41 years old, has faced questions about his performances against Leclerc since joining the team, and Ferrari are already being pressed about their ability to challenge Mercedes. If Hamilton does not extend and Ferrari move on, a seat opens, but that scenario is a 2027 story at the very earliest. Aston Martin brings the largest number and the least to back it up. In 2025, the team reportedly tabled a 3-year deal worth €264 million, backed by Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, which would have pushed Verstappen's annual earnings to €88 million and more than doubled his salary. That offer came before the 2026 season began. Since then, Aston Martin has become one of the slowest teams on the grid, finishing just one of their first 3 races, with Fernando Alonso placed 18th at the Japanese Grand Prix. Martin Brundle described the situation at Silverstone as a horror show and put an alarming timeline on it. Lawrence Stroll is being warned by insiders that a decisive call on the team's entire future direction may be unavoidable. The money is there, the car is not. Running underneath every transfer scenario is a possibility that would make all of them irrelevant. Verstappen has said publicly that he is seriously considering walking away from the sport, and the core of his complaint is the increased electrification built into the 2026 regulations, something he had been warning Formula One about since as far back as 2023. After the Japanese Grand Prix, those comments moved past frustration into something that sounded closer to a settled position. Lewis Hamilton called the 2026 season the best racing of his career. Verstappen, driving a car that cannot challenge the top 3, reached for entirely different language. Whether the retirement talk reflects a genuine intention or functions as leverage in any transfer negotiation, the effect on every team watching is the same: urgency. Nobody wants to be the team that waited too long and found he had already walked out. Verstappen has had time to sit with all of this. The cancellations of the Bahrain and Saudi Arabian Grand Prix created a 5-week break between Japan and Miami, followed by another 3-week gap shortly after. And during that stretch, Verstappen was seen competing at the Nürburgring in GT racing. Extended periods away from the track are rarely just rest. They are when futures get decided. The Hungarian Grand Prix in late July is the reference point the entire story turns on. If Verstappen sits outside the top 2 at that stage, the window opens and runs until October, and by that point, every team principal with genuine interest will have been working behind the scenes for months already. The clause is real. The standings are real. The summer deadline is real. What happens between now and October will determine whether the most dominant driver of his generation mounts one final title challenge at a new team, or decides that Formula One no longer gives him what he came for. Subscribe to Racecraft and hit the notification bell so you do not miss the next update as this develops heading into Miami and beyond. I'll see you in the next one.